Many people have been looking into the amendments and what we have presented this year. And one of the big amendments that many people are talking about is Amendment 3. And I wanted to get another side of the issue with Kim Rivers, who is the CEO of Trulieve, and she's joining us today on Florida's Voice. And I do appreciate a few minutes of your time today. First of all, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Excuse me. Okay, there you are. I just had to turn the mic up for a second. It's good to see you. Good to see
Good
you.
to
Sorry
see
about that.
you. Good to,
Good to see
no,
you.
it's okay. It's okay. Good to see you too. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, a couple of things. First of all, let me just open with this. How, for those people that don't know maybe what Trulieve is, maybe you can explain to people what it is the company does.
Yeah, so Trulieve started here in Florida. I'm a born and raised Floridian, grew up in Jacksonville. And we started with 10 employees and have grown the company to thousands of employees and thousands or hundreds of locations across the state. We're one of 25 licensed medical marijuana companies here in the state of Florida and are proud supporters of Amendment 3.
Gotcha. So just so you know where I stand on everything right now. So it was very recently that my mom passed away from cancer. She had multiple myeloma. And I can tell you that one of the things that I've not been able to do is erase some of the messages from my cell phone of her pleading with me to do anything I could to help to relieve the pain. And I did everything that I could to find whatever I could, everything, to be able to do that. So I intimately know about medical marijuana and the benefits. And so I just want you to know that ahead of time. And it's still there. I mean, her voice in my head, it'll never go away. The message, I just don't have the heart to get rid of. So understanding that, that's where I stand here with this. So I want to put medical marijuana aside, clearly, because that's not what this is about. So as we get into the discussion now, so here you are and with the medical marijuana side, and the money that's been spent, upwards, I guess, of 100 million of money that's been spent to promote a yes on Amendment 3. I guess putting the medical marijuana issue aside, I just would ask the first question would be why?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your mom, and I'm hopeful that that medical marijuana did assist in transition. We hear that a lot, candidly, and that is one of the great benefits, right, of medical marijuana is to give folks an option to be able to choose a product that helps them transition in a more lucid way, and hopefully adds and aids in some of that connectivity at the end of life. So I am I'm sorry for your loss. And but really, and I hear you that they're separate, but they are very related. And I think that it's important to know that what we are talking about here with Amendment 3 and adult use marijuana continues to be a conversation about that freedom of choice. Because we have lots of folks in our communities who currently are utilizing marijuana. Marijuana is not new. It's been here, right? We have 3 million Floridians who currently use marijuana in the state of Florida. 800,000 of those folks access it through the medical program, but there's over 2 million Floridians who access it through the illicit and unregulated markets. Many of those folks, right, have different conditions, candidly, that that don't qualify under the medical program. And so, when we talk about wanting to draw this bright line between, medical and adult use, what we find and what we find in other states, populations like our veterans, for example, who are sent home and have, horrible nightmares and trouble sleeping and trouble functioning, and who may not be comfortable going and getting a medical marijuana card for a variety of reasons, but can access, marijuana and safe regulated products through the regulated market, and this would allow them to do that. So one is about personal freedom of adults to be able to make a choice to use a safe product. Secondly, it's about, again, safety of access. We have products now on the unregulated market that are laced with substances that are contaminated. There was testimony from the Florida Senate floor last year that the Florida Department of Highway Patrol, when they confiscate products, that over 90% of that marijuana is actually contaminated with a harmful substance. So it's about taking that off the street and into a regulated, safe environment so that we don't have Floridians going to the hospital and candidly, in some cases, passing away from a contaminated product. And then finally, I would just say that it's really about, even if you don't consume, right? It's about increased safety. It's about taking those drug deals off of our streets and into a regulated environment. And an FAU study was just released 2 days ago that says that teen use, I'm a mom, right? So this is a very important topic for me. And teen use declined in states that have legalization. Why?
That's really strange that you say that, because I'm actually looking at, I have a stack of papers here that would say the opposite. That, as a matter of fact, teen use has gone up. Use has gone up and doubled in some cases. So I guess, before we move on, I did want to say this, and we can get back to this in just a second.
Sure.
A lot of what I'm hearing, what you're saying, is all about the medicinal use, but just to be clear, $100 million plus towards this and pro Amendment 3. Do you stand to gain from this at all?
Yeah, so I mean, we absolutely, again, there's 2 million Floridians that we're talking about transitioning from the illicit and unregulated market into the regulated.
But Trulieve as a company. I mean, does Trulieve stand
Sure.
just so people are aware of it?
Yeah, sure. So Trulieve, along with the 25 other current licensed medical marijuana companies that exist in the state of Florida, will transition to be able to allow sales not only of medical, because medical is very important that we keep that in the state of Florida, but then in addition, we will be able to sell adult use. Also, though, I think it's important for folks to know there are 22 companies that are waiting to be licensed. The governor can sign those. They're waiting on his desk right now. So we're talking about 47 companies, once this is passed, that will have the ability to make sure that there's safe access. Also,
but just to be clear,
Trulieve is one of them, and I also think it's important because I think this is a point of misconception. So let's just make sure that we're above board here. In addition, sure. Right, in the language of the amendment, there is specific language that allows the legislature to issue new licenses of any size, any type, any amount, any number. So there is going to be an expansion of the market under Amendment 3.
Well, because when I see some of the portions that you're talking about, like Section C6 that talks about the type of marijuana that could be regulated, in the amendment, it talks about medical only. It doesn't talk about anything else. And I think and I'm sure lawyers have probably said to you, some attorney or someone said something somewhere where there is something to be said about the precedent that is that's set there about the expression of one is the exclusion of others. And that's something that people have brought to my attention, is that if you've excluded it, if you've included it in the amendment, then the others are excluded. So what about that? Because you're talking about medicinal again, and that's what's in the amendment. So how is the legislature going to do anything?
Yeah, the legislature has broad authority under this amendment. And that's just candidly, most of our constitutional...
I'm wondering how it has broad authority if I'm telling you that the authority that they have is just the medical side of it.
Yeah, so there's a specific provision. Again, if you read the text of the amendment, there's a specific provision that literally says that this amendment grants the legislature, it is a grant of authority to the legislature to pass laws consistent with the amendment. And so we know, right, that absolutely, and look, you can talk to, candidly, any legislator. I mean, I've been spending my time talking to leadership and to members of the House and Senate for the last 2 years on this issue, and they will tell you that they absolutely intend to regulate this. They intend to expand and build upon the medical framework. They do not plan to start from scratch. That's ridiculous, right? The adult use amendment builds on top of the medical amendment that currently exists in the Constitution. And so what will happen is we'll have the same laws, the same regulations, the same restrictions, the same robust guardrails in the state of Florida currently that we have on our medical program, on our adult use program.
Forgive me for interrupting, but forgive me if I'm skeptical, and let me explain why. I remember not too long ago, when we were talking about an amendment for felons to have the right to vote in the state of Florida, I watched the Supreme Court. I watched the lawyers step up to the Supreme Court and said, yes, all four corners have to be covered, including restitution. And the lawyers agreed. And the Supreme Court said, not once, but twice. We're sure about this, right? Oh, absolutely. What happened afterwards? Afterwards, once it was passed, the minute someone brought up the issue of restitution, they were being sued into oblivion. Because that's what happens. So I'm looking at the real world situation. So forgive me that when you tell me, afterwards we'll get this right.
Yeah, no, well, that's
on
not,
something. And
yeah.
especially on something. Forgive me, especially on something that is 4 pages long. I mean, shouldn't if it's just about legalization of marijuana, shouldn't it be as short as Amendment 4, which is a whole other issue, but Amendment 4
Drew,
or Amendment
I
2?
gotta tell you, right? Like it's too long, it's too short, it's too this, it's too that, right? I mean, I think
No,
that
no,
in
no.
the
No,
constitution,
I mean
in the,
legitimately.
yeah, in the,
If it's about the recreational use of marijuana, shouldn't it just be about that, and then the legislature can come in and handle the issues after the
yeah.
fact? Like, why did there have
So
to be so many pages and
well,
regulations and things in
yeah.
there?
So first of all, again, we're building on top of a program that has been in existence for 8 years. So we're building on top of the medical program, and it's important, right, for Floridians to understand that number one, again, this is about freedom for adults to have, personal possession of marijuana to stop arresting Floridians for small amounts of a plant, which is absolutely ridiculous, and stop ruining people's lives. This is about government getting out of our homes and giving adults the ability to make a
Yeah,
choice to use a substance that's safer than alcohol.
yeah.
A. B, again, it's about the ability to have safe, regulated product. And you know what? Having safe and regulated product, that's really important. And it's important to make sure that those guardrails and that structure that
Yeah, but
remains in place for medical still exists. So
But a safe,
I
but
I,
a safe,
I
safe
do
and
think
regulated. I appreciate that on the medical side because on the medical side, of course, you have control over it. You can do all of these things. But the
sure.
suggestion that you would do that and have something regulated would lead people to believe that there would be no black market. Like there would never be anything where, of course, I have more than a few pages that talk about the black market increasing in the states. Like we have examples outside of the state of Florida of the negative things that happen. And sometimes people feel like they're being ignored. For example, the freedom issue. Like, why is it that why can't people grow it in their backyard? If it's about freedom, what
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah, I believe that people should be able to grow it in their backyard. And candidly, right, we would have loved to have had that in the amendment. Unfortunately, because of our constitutional requirements and single subject, that was tried in the previous amendment. Drew, this has been tried 3 times. Floridians have tried to bring legalization to the ballot. Millions of Floridians have signed petitions saying that they
But
want the
they,
opportunity to
but
vote on
they.
this. So hang on a second, please let me
Go
finish.
ahead. Go ahead.
So as it relates to the single subject rule with home grow, right? The last time this amendment tried to make its way through the Supreme Court, it was refuted. It was denied by the Supreme Court because it violated single subject because it had legalization in home grow. This amendment does not prohibit home grow. This amendment is silent on home grow so the voters could finally vote on it. Now, what's exciting is that we actually have Republican and Democratic senators who have agreed, because this has become such a big issue, and we're supportive of it as well, that home grow will be at issue and will be the next step and will be voted on in the Florida legislature, and that we will have home grow in the state of Florida, which is the next step towards freedom. So absolutely, home grow should be allowed. By the way, we sell clones and seeds and other um, you know um,
I
things for
just,
people to be able to grow
yeah.
in other states. So we're absolutely supportive. So this
Right.
notion that home grow now is so important to everyone, we hope that it is, and we're super excited to support that
It
moving
just seemed,
forward.
but it seems odd. The single the issue of what was it
Single
the
subject.
single right the single subject because we had
Mhm.
this once before with the oil drilling and vaping and they were put together and there was no issue there. So that seems
All I
kind
can
of
tell you is
seems odd.
specifically on this topic, the
Yeah.
Supreme
Yeah.
Court rejected the last amendment
Yeah.
with legalization and home grow and said that it violated the single subject. And they
How
actually
does
laid out a roadmap for approval.
Okay, how does another thing that comes up often is I mean, there's so much that I can that you're bringing up that I want to talk about. Uh,
Sure.
it is an interesting thing at the constitutional amendment process and the talk of freedom. I mean, listen, our founders talked about freedom. You talk about libertarians and live and let live, but we do have to have a civil society. I mean, there are certain things that we don't want to do to have a civil society. And when it comes to amendments and when it comes to this issue of freedom, how do my rights work in all of this? In other words, I don't want to sit outside at my favorite restaurant and have marijuana smoke all over me, as people do in New York City, where my family lives, that can't walk the streets of New York without it sticking to their clothes. Go to Las Vegas, go to Colorado, and all these states. When does my right come into play?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, Florida is not Colorado or New York. And I mean, I think, again, as a born and raised Floridian,
Yeah.
and with a great, great leadership on all sides of government here, we're not going to be, New York or Colorado. I mean, I think
Why,
that's
well,
kind
why
of
not? But why not?
that's
Why not?
that's a
Well, why
ridiculous
not?
notion. So, well, first of all, again, in New York, which we can talk about, in New York, what they did is they decriminalized without having a regulated market. So when you decriminalize and you don't have rule of law, you don't have a very clear, bright line, that's what happens. Things run rampant. That is not how we're doing it here. What we can do is we can look at other conservative states like Arizona. We can look at Ohio, right? There is no smoking in public. There's no public consumption. You don't smell it
So it
everywhere.
doesn't.
I
So
mean,
there is no. So it doesn't happen. So because there's a law that says no consumption in public, nobody's doing it. Like it doesn't
it's this,
exist.
it's
Kind of
this,
like the
it's
black
this,
market, which goes away
it's
because it's legalized, which doesn't
No,
happen.
it's the same thing that cigarette smoke has now. I
Yeah.
mean, we have effectively in the state of
Yeah.
Florida, I think we've done a really great job. We're a law and order state, right? We do a great job regulating and we do a great job enforcing our laws. And absolutely, we have the ability here in Florida to do it the right way. And I mean, look, just like, I mean, we can talk about, gun ownership, for example, right? We have the constitutional right to carry a firearm, yet no one would suggest that we're going to do that and that we have the ability to carry one into a stadium, right? It's the same construct here, and it's ridiculous to think that we as Floridians in this great state that we can't get this right and that we can't regulate it, while also again allowing people, adults over the age of 21, the freedom to make a choice of what they do and they don't do in their own home without government interference.
Yeah. So, what about the immunity issue?
Sure.
The issue of why if it's not that big a deal or it's being misconstrued, or then why put anything in there about immunity? I mean, if you are going to be selling a Trulieve, if you're going to be selling once if this were to pass,
Sure.
and somebody were to drive a car and kill somebody, let's just say, and they are under the influence or whatever would happen in the manufacturing process, maybe something accidentally happens in the manufacturing process and there's a loss of life. And there's an immunity process within this amendment that says that you
Great,
have
let me
no
just stop you.
harm.
We would
Yeah.
we would be liable. We're liable today. It's the same language as
But
medical.
what about the
No,
amendment says you wouldn't be?
that's actually not true. The
It's
immunity
not true.
language,
Okay.
it's the immunity language that's in there is the same
Yeah.
language that was in there for medical. Okay. And the reason it's there is to make sure that our employees do not go to jail for drug trafficking. That's it. That's what we're talking
That's all.
about, that they have the ability to have chain of custody of a product that is federally illegal and that they are not prosecuted under state law for drug trafficking. We currently, sadly, there's a car accident case, unfortunately, where one of our drivers actually did have an accident over the last year. That case is currently being litigated. We do not have immunity. That is false. And that is absolutely not true and is not true under medical. And it is the same language and it will not be true under adult use.
Yeah, it's interesting because, forgive me again, because, you have both sides of this in the language and it's there and people can read it. And many people don't get the opportunity. They just see the summary. And when you get into these details, there's your side, there's other people's side. But forgive me when I see the way that we have a litany of lawsuits that go on in this state. And far too often, it's always after the fact that we find out that these lawsuits come upon people. For example, the issue of felons being voting, and then all the lawsuits that followed after people were doing things, dishonest people, lawyers who were giving the Supreme Court one thing and doing something else completely different after the fact. I guess what I'm trying to, and I'm looking at the time, and I know we're running short, but there's so much here that I'm trying to understand. And again, forgive me, because when we get to the both sides of the argument,
Yep.
and you're a mom, I'm a dad, I got a 16-year-old, and I'm just speaking for myself right now. In no way, shape, or form would I ever personally, want my son smoking marijuana. Don't see the benefits in it. Don't see recreational why he should do it. Now, I would argue that you would probably say something, and other people like live and let live, but at the same time, is there anything to be said about deterrence? Is there anything to be said about the fact that there are people that have decided through their legislature that they don't want this in the state, that we've gone through this process, and that there are forces, people might even stand to benefit from this, who come along and want to go around the will of the people of the state. People have a problem with that. Do you have a problem with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, right, again, this is the third time that Floridians have attempted to get this into the ballot, on the ballot, right? We know in Florida there's a very high hurdle for a citizen ballot initiative, 60% threshold, right? So over 60% of Floridians have to vote, right, that they in fact want adult use marijuana, and the freedom for adults to be able to make this choice, come next week. And so we're going to find out. And listen, I think if the will of the people speak on this issue, then I think that the state of Florida and our government is going to do a fantastic job implementing this in a way that respects that freedom, but also respects the fabric of Florida and ensures that this is done the right way with proper guardrails. I mean, look, times have changed here. We are living in 2024. We have our presidential nominee, Donald Trump, who has specifically endorsed Amendment 3 and said that Florida has an opportunity to do it the right way. And of course, Vice President Kamala Harris has been supportive as well. We have over 70% of Americans across this country who believe, when asked, that legalization is the right thing to do. And so, I appreciate and certainly want to make sure that folks understand that, look, it has to be respected for all Floridians. We have to make sure that we create an environment that's safe. We have to make sure we create an environment where that tax revenue is generated and actually does go back into our communities to make a difference, the hundreds of millions of dollars. But we do have a unique opportunity here in Florida that's different from other places in the country to do this the right way, to put freedom first, and to make sure that we're respectful of everyone to the best of our ability.
Well, I will say a couple of things. First of all, number one, Donald Trump can be wrong, and I could say that. No politician is perfect. No human being walk the earth right now is perfect. So there's that. Could get bad information, wrong information, might not have all the information. There's a lot of people that don't. And when they find out about it, they don't like what they're hearing. And so I think there's that. And, look, when something keeps coming up over and over again for people, and forgive me, and I'm listening to the music coming in. I guess that's going to cut it off there. All right. Well, fair enough. All right. Listen, I appreciate you being on.
Listen, and thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. This is what democracy is all about. So thanks.
All right. We'll see you. All right. That's Kim Rivers, everybody, CEO of Trulieve, joining us.